Ladies and gentlemen, it is the most glorious time of year. Yes, Christmas is ever so delightful, and New Year's brings about a restart of sorts. But it also brings about postseason football. It's the time we've been waiting for. Until the next time we'll be waiting for, which is the offseason and the draft. Welcome to playoff football and playoff football discussion here on your favorite NFL podcast, going on for the last 3 years or so now, give or take. I think timeline is somewhere in there. Who knows? Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. We are here to discuss postseason football. It is time. Justin, as the games master of the program, is here to start the show with me. Justin, how we doing? Swig of water. Perfect timing on that by me.
Yes. No, you're good. You're good. I'm doing good, man. It's always fun to watch or talk about football, rather. I'm going to watch it too.
Indeed. And we'll get to be doing plenty of that in this weekend as we have 6 wildcard games now. Of course, as has been the new way of things the last few years with the expanded playoffs. Just wait until we get 8 playoff teams. That'll completely screw up the bye weeks, but just you wait. The NFL is going to do it. But no, in all seriousness, this is the time we've been waiting for. This is what all the buildup leads to right here for the playoffs. 14 teams remain. 12 of them play this weekend, and we will ultimately see who moves on to the next round, who survives and advances, and we're going to have a lot of fun breaking that down. But before that, because there's always a prelude to what we talk about, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the Podfather is not with us to start this episode. We will be getting him towards the end of the program today. He is not able to join us for a bulk of the show, but he will still be here to give his thoughts, because what we're going to be doing is that we'll be having the wild card round discussion. No definitive predictions during the discussion. At the very end, we will save all the predictions. All of us will give them at the very end of the show for each game, each round, as we move on. But before we get to that, we're going to talk a little bit of a preview, because we made mention to it on last episode, but NFL Black Monday was this past week, and we're going to be discussing that sequence of events because coaches were fired. And Justin, they didn't wait until Monday to fire. A couple of guys met their end, or probably got news of their end, and maybe we just didn't know until the next day. On Sunday itself, like midway through the 4:00 games, there was some news trickling out on people whose jobs looked like they were on the line, and people that were officially fired in the case in some instances. We don't really need too much preamble on that, as we're going to. And by the way, we do have a surprise, real quick, before we continue. We do have a surprise for the playoff discussion. We'll get to that in a couple moments. But let's talk about Black Monday reactions, Justin. We kind of preluded and gave our thoughts of okay, these are teams that kind of ill-performed. There were some games that we were waiting to see what these final Week 18 results would show us before the playoffs, in terms of the playoff seeding itself, and also teams, where they finish, where they're going to be drafting, and will coaches be or not be fired. And you kind of say it went both ways, but as I alluded to, that some teams did not wait until the end of even the 4:00 games to make the news happen. I remember, because I was at work when this news broke. I actually broke it to everyone who was in my media room with me. But the Patriots were the team, I think, the first to pull the trigger with a complete firing for their, most likely the coaching staff as a whole, but their head coach as well. Were you surprised, Justin, that they just completely, one and done season for Gerard Mayo and his tenure in New England?
Yes and no. I don't necessarily think it was the wrong call for them to do it. But it didn't seem very Patriot. You know what I mean? We're so used to this franchise holding things down in a certain way, and to have a one and done coach seems out of character for them. But things were pretty bad, and I do think that while I think I would have given him at least another year, in the situation that you're in, it's time to wipe the slate clean. And that means wipe the slate clean of the Bill Belichick era, because this was pretty much just a continuation. I mean, maybe things would have been a little bit better with Bill there. You maybe would have won a couple extra games, but things were going downhill for a long time. And look, this is the time. You don't want to end up being what the Bears were year after year, where you were bringing in a new quarterback. The coach is not going to be there. I mean, they basically just did that, but now they have an opportunity to actually take another quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see actually if they do take a quarterback or if they want to stick with. Oh my God, why can't I think of his name?
Last name rhymes with Bay.
Drake May.
Yeah, there you go.
It's going to be interesting to see if they decide to stay with him or they decide to move on. But yeah, it was just time. That whole roster needs to be shut down. They need to start doing things in a different way and rebrand themselves and move on from the identity that was Bill Belichick. So I think that it was the right move for them. Surprising nonetheless. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they decide to hire.
Yeah, and you kind of look at that last game for the Patriots of this season. It was almost like you feel a tryout for a lot of players on the team, obviously, which is kind of what Week 18 is in instances like this, right? Guys getting to step up, maybe had a lesser role throughout the season. They just absolutely show up. If you randomly started Kayshon Boutte in fantasy, he gave you 20-plus fantasy points in your championship game. If you foresaw the scribes and said, you know what, I got to put him in. There was performances, to say the very least, throughout the league that surprised people and how good guys did and maybe how bad guys did in certain instances. But ultimately, it was interesting to see. And really, like I'm more lean towards the side of like I wasn't expecting it because I didn't think in year one Mayo's job was on the line. I very much now, if you were to tell me if they had kept him and they started like 2-7 next year, I would earmark him as being fired for next season. I definitely could have seen that coming. And like you said, just even with
in the situation that they're in, with all that cap space and all these draft picks and all the high picks, you don't want to have that just in case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100% right. And that's where I think you make the good point of justifying it because, while there could be some questions, I think personally, I don't see any reason why the Patriots wouldn't want to just build around Drake May at this point. Like, yeah, he had a couple rough games in there, as I think we need to realize all the rookie QBs do. He had some really good games. He had some moments. He had some performances. And he showed it, I think, even more of a dual threat ability than we kind of realized, especially myself coming out for him coming out of college. So I think the Patriots may have already found their kid at quarterback. And now it's just, don't waste any time with him. Get the perfect head coach for him in there. And just build this team around, right? And we were kind of seeing this because I think between last year and even the year before, this is before they got onto the roster the last year of Belichick, like this was just a team that like not veteran heavy. Like this is a team that's going to shed some talent in the offseason, but also going to gain some talent in terms of like just new faces throughout. I think what you mentioned there is true, Justin. Like there's going to be a lot of guys that are holdovers of the previous regime, unless they're a really good player, are probably not going to be on that roster for too much longer. Just as the way it goes. It's going to be a lot of new faces in New England, hardy har. But it's going to make sense. It's going to be this young quarterback that you're going to get the head coach for. And there's a lot of intriguing candidates out there, right, to be able to head coach a young talent like that and head coach a roster here coming up, where there's some intriguing pieces scattered throughout the lineup, whether it's underrated guys, decent of players. I mean, you have your quarterback on offense. You got your quarterback on defense because Christian Gonzalez – when he doesn't get injured for a season, he's a really good quarter throughout a 17-game season,
He would be, yeah.
Yeah. So again, showing some flashes there. There's something there. This is the GM who, like, it's been so long because obviously we know Belichick had stranglehold on both roles basically in his time there. Now this is kind of like a different era for the Patriots. So maybe it does make sense. Maybe it does. And we'll see who is that inevitable hiring, of course. We might get one in the postseason. You don't know. But obviously, after the postseason, in the early stages of the offseason, teams will very much
be hire now, or do they have to wait until the official league year?
I mean, I think if it's someone who's technically not with a team, I think they could just agree. Like, they can agree, and then the hiring is official in the new league year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that that's the case because, like, in all the other sports, like, head coaches get fired and hired within the postseason all the time. So it's probably one of those like pen to paper isn't real until the new league year that happens in March. So, but most certainly if they haven't already, which I think they probably already have, they're reaching out to guys, they're scheduling meetings, the whole shebang, to say the very least. How many of these coordinators are in the postseason is what they want to see. But we talk about that firing by the Patriots. It wasn't so much a head coach firing spree as it was more just a coordinator firing spree. A lot of teams looked at their coaching staffs and said, you know what, changes need to be made. The Seattle Seahawks were very notable. Like they fired their offensive coordinator. The Cincinnati Bengals fired their defensive coordinator. Guy was getting was talking about the head coaching cycle the year after they made it to the Super Bowl and the year after they had like the AFC title game. Like they make it back-to-back years Super Bowl and then the AFC title game and the loss against the Bengals. Both the Bengals coordinators were very, very highly touted, right? Callahan got hired and then got hired by the Titans, and we see what happened this year in Tennessee. And now the Bengals DC's fired. So there are a lot of coordinators. What do you think? You don't need to speak to either of the specific ones I've mentioned. You could just say in general to the coordinator firings we did see around the league, Justin. What do you make of the turnover in various coaching staffs and the teams? It's seemingly clear that they know what the weakness is and they're addressing it as quick as can be.
Yeah, some of them were surprising to me. Like in Cleveland, for example, they kept Stefanski, right?
Yeah.
And they just fired their coordinators?
Yep. Which was what's his Dorsey, I think. Was Dorsey the Browns OC? Or I saw he got fired again.
I think so. Yeah, I didn't understand some of them. I mean, I guess I get it. Like I understand why, but like what are you going to have under the same head coach? Right. I understand Stefanski. They've had more success under Stefanski than they've had in a long time. And it is good to have not a ton of turnover. But what, you're going to hire some new guys for 1 year, and then when it doesn't work out next year, what's going to happen? Maybe it does work out, but I can't imagine it working out with this quarterback. The issue has been the quarterback. The issue has been the offense. And Stefanski, an offensive guy, has not gotten the job done. I don't know what firing your coordinators is going to do.
Well, not even just to Stefanski, I mean, if you want to continue on that, you can. But were there any non-firings that surprised you just in terms of around the league? I will say, like for myself real quick, I'm not surprised that they kept them, but the Giants, like putting out a statement that they're keeping their GM and head coach duo of Joe Schoen and Daboll, it's kind of funny. I saw people clowning in the comments, be like, it's not that good of a sign when your team has to put out a statement that they're keeping the pieces.
No, it's not great.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Not great to say the very least.
I was a little bit surprised by the Pierce firing, although I get why they did it. The Giants, I don't want to say I'm surprised because I think that I guess it's nice to know that you have the job security where you can gamble the way they did and keep your job, which is not the case in a lot of NFL teams. But I'd like to see them, start from scratch and build their own team the way that you normally see a GM and head coach work. I mean, they didn't really do that. They didn't really have that opportunity in New York. They had like a ready-made team. They did, to be fair, more with it than people thought they could right from the get-go. And then it kind of fell apart, and now we're here. But I don't think that they got to be what they were hired to be. I mean, I probably Daboll more so than Schoen, but now we're going to see what these guys really have in terms of drafting, in terms of building a team, because while the defense is good, the offense is terrible, and they're starting from scratch, and they have 2 young players and like a lineman or 2, and then everything else is probably going to go. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm not surprised by the Giants holding firm and, sticking with their guys. They've always been a franchise that's believed in their people and believed in the right hirings. I know it's been a down decade for them in terms of their history, but I expect this team to get back to where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. And maybe sometimes it is the consistency you need, and you hope that the guys who have seen through it, even though it's not been great, that they could you give them time and they find a way to get through the issue, which is kind of probably the logic the Dolphins are using, right? Because I think if the Podfather were on right now, and I'm surprised he's not texted us this yet, I feel like if Rick, like I'm talking about, things that didn't happen around the league, you could tell by the title what my number one thing is, but, McDaniels and Greer, right? I think especially McDaniel for Rick has been like a sticking point of like, look, yeah, he's a guy that the players in that locker room might like, but it's it's now the first time in his 3 seasons, yes, that they've missed the playoffs, but even in their first 2 appearance, like the first 2 years of those 2 appearances, never like this feels like a Dolphins team. You kind of talk about the Giants, like there may have been, it looked like you could kind of argue they overachieved because the fact they entered the season with Daniel Jones, hamstrung to that contract, et cetera, et cetera. You look at the Dolphins, this is a team that I would say underachieved this year. I know there were issues, I know injuries, I know this and that, but this is a team when you looked at the talent on paper should have done a lot more, and they're ending this year with not being part of the postseason.
Yeah, but I think that that's something to do with the injuries, and I don't think that they were poorly coached, even when they weren't scoring touchdowns when Tua went down originally early in the season, and everyone was like, "Wow, this offense is terrible without Tua." They couldn't figure it out. They kept those games close. You know what I mean? Those were good. I mean, I think they got blown out in one of them, maybe, but I think that they're a well-coached team under McDaniels. I just they haven't proven that they deserve to be there yet, and that's an issue. Um, and I can't imagine he's getting more than one more season before this whole thing is blown up.
Yeah, and really for Miami, we could talk about what didn't happen. Let's talk about what has happened real quick, Justin. Tyreek Hill seemingly gone? He might be out of Miami. Jalen Ramsey from social media and all that, it looks like he could be out of Miami. Losing a couple pieces there for the Dolphins. This is a Dolphins team in dismay because Tua once again doesn't finish the season for them. As Rick actually just texted us saying that Snoop saved Mike McDaniel's job, it seems, even though they did lose that final game to the Jets. But it's very much a case of this Dolphins team. It's not like disappointing into the season, but they'll be able to reset easily. It looks like there could be some significant changes coming to this Dolphins team. I won't spend too much time on it because this could definitely be a topic we broach later in the postseason, maybe early stages of the offseason. But a gut reaction for you, Justin, is Tyreek Hill going to be a Dolphin next year?
I think he wants to be there, but he does not accept losing, which is what you want from your players. But there is a lot production-wise that I think that he left on the table this year. And there's only so much you have, so many years you have in this league, especially he's been in the league now for a few years. So I could see him being traded again. We can discuss where if you want at another time, but I don't know. I don't want to, like McDaniel said, I don't want to have a gut reaction to a guy who was coming off a heartbreaking loss and missed the playoffs for the first time in his career. Like, we'll see. Dude, we know Tyreek's an emotional guy. We've seen him, be emotional before, and there's nothing wrong with that. He just doesn't want to freaking lose. And being on the Dolphins historically, that's what's going to happen. So
yeah, well, historically, since the end of the Marino days, to say the very least, and that is a big point you bring up there. This is the first time in his career Tyreek Hill's not playing postseason football. This is a guy very much to playing football in January, and maybe early February. So this is a guy who welcomes that, relishes that, and it could be a point of this was a season because he dealt with some injuries too, right? Like even if it wasn't necessarily like game-ending stuff like it was for most guys, like there is no such thing as a football player that doesn't get hurt during a season. It's just no such thing. So, like this guy probably, who knows, in this last week, his wrist bothering him, his ankle, his forearms, like enough injuries on a guy like that to where, and he's even he's been on the questionable / weekly injury list for, it felt like the back quarter of the season, right? So this is probably a guy who's fed up with how the season turned out, right? Dealing with his own injuries and just couldn't be bothered to finish off a game that I think already we knew it didn't mean anything because the Broncos had already won, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's actually understandable, relatively speaking. A lot of people making the joke, and Tyreek Hill himself, he's stoked that flame, right? Because he put his profile picture of Antonio Brown's body and he photoshopped his head on it. It's obviously he's doing that. But I think, like you said, I think Greer and McDaniel can just get him in a room and talk with him. I think they could be. Because here's the thing with Tyreek Hill, obviously we know he likes winning football, but he wanted to leave the Chiefs to get paid. So he has the Super Bowl on his resume. Now, more than one would be nice. Of course, I'm not going to blame a guy for wanting it, but if you're it's just interesting to see the modus operandi was I've done my time with Kansas City. I've won my Super Bowl. That's on my resume forever and ever. Now I want to get paid by someone. And now he's getting paid in a tax-free state, which we know is big for his, own offense that he's coaching, we think, with his family, because dude has a bajillion kids. He's challenging Antonio Cromartie for that. You got paid. You're still getting paid. It's just one of those intriguing things, to say the very least. So I think it's and I think most NFL players would admit, especially after the end of a bad season, you just want to get away from football for a bit. Literally give him a moment, talk with him, just have one conversation with him before, hey, off the season's finished, boom, let's come back in 2 weeks and talk. And if hopefully he's reasonable, he comes back refreshed. You don't bother him for 2 weeks, and then you can hash it out and figure it out. I think that's honestly what probably happens in a lot of cases, right? Because Lord knows these are some of the best athletes in the world. Losing sucks, and nobody's happy after they lose. So I don't blame them at all. If this is that reaction from him, and if he does just come back to the team and he talks it out, it's normal. It's human. It's human, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the fact these guys do what feel like extraterrestrial feats on the field sometimes with some of these crazy plays they make, they're human. They're human at the end of the day. So we'll see what that saga holds. We'll give it a couple weeks. We'll touch upon it maybe, because there's the week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. I think that'll be our week. We're talking Super Bowl or Super Bowl, excuse me. Well, we're going to bring back some of these topics and some of these issues, and maybe some slight look aheads to topics to discuss in the postseason. Because of course, the teams that get eliminated in the postseason are definitely going to give us plenty. Justin, by the way, you mentioned the Raiders and letting go of Antonio Pierce. Raiders also, after we thought that they weren't going to do anything further than that, they fired their general manager, Tom Telesco. The Titans also firing their general manager, Rand Carthen. So both of those guys, the boots to them, they're kicked out of town. It's very interesting to see teams. Telesco, I'm trying to remember, was he a one-and-done hire, or was this his first year with the Raiders?
I think this was his first year.
His second year, I meant. But no, so first year for him and Rand Carthen. I think this is year 2, if I'm not mistaken, for him in Tennessee.
Year 1.5, I think.
Right,
because remember, they had that issue where they
fired Robinson in the
middle
midway
of the
through the season. So it's very, very intriguing. What do you make of those two teams? I mean, with the Raiders, it's clearly a reset. What other effects could that have on the Raiders? And then to the Titans, this may just be that they've kept Callahan at this moment, right? They haven't fired him, or did they? I don't think they fired him.
I think he's still on the roster.
On the coaching staff. So what do you make of the Raiders reset, which we knew there was going to at least be a partial one, but they're clearly going to full reset? What do you make of the Raiders' full reset under Davis once again, Justin? And what do you make of the Titans firing the GM, but keeping, yes, I could definitively say, keeping the head coach?
I think that it's probably too early to assume that they are keeping the head coach. I think that's probably something that will be hashed out shortly. But I can't believe they would not fire the head coach after, what they're looking to do with the number 1 overall pick now, correct? I mean, they're very obviously going to have a new quarterback.
Yep.
And I mean, things went downhill there fast this year. That's another team that's going to probably have some sort of roster reset. They're going to have to move on from everything, right? Why would you Why would you Chicago yourself? And then the same thing with the Raiders. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but they are also going to need a full roster reset.
Except for tight end, because Brock Bowers is a beast.
Yeah, Brock Bowers is a beast with, what do you have, 3 different quarterbacks this year?
Yeah, basically. And he set all kinds of tight end records for rookies.
So, I mean, they're going to have to try and figure out how to keep that scheme and still still have that guy there and producing. But everyone else is pretty much, what are you going to do? And it's weird that this was the season that Jacoby Myers had his first 1,000-yard season. It's a weird time for that to come, considering all the turmoil that happened there.
You got 3 building blocks in Vegas: Crosby, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, I kind of mentioned it with Tyreek Hill. I know I asked your gut reaction there. I don't know. What do you make with Mason Crosby, man? Like he's I know he's been Raiders through and through, but can he really stick out much more with that team?
Can he? Yeah, he can. Will he? That I don't know. We'll have to see where the cards fall in the offseason, but it might be time for him to move on from there too.
Maybe.
I don't know why you'd want to. I mean, I guess I know why you'd want to stay, but like, why would you want to stay?
Like, I guess he's trying to do the loyalty thing, which I like. Look, fair point to him. Like, loyalty is cool, but self-preservation. Like Mason
Why
Crosby.
are you loyal to something that's bad for you, dude?
That's what you got to ask. I mean, is he just loyal to Mark Davis because Mark Davis has been willing to pay him as much as like Mark Davis paying Mason Crosby is probably the one purchase he makes a year that outweighs his PF Chang's orders. So like who knows at that point when it comes to that. But just I don't know. I don't know. Mason Crosby, just do right by yourself, bro. Or maybe Justin. Hold on. Here's my theory. Mason Crosby is trying to build up endurance because the apocalypse is upon us with the climate and the weather. And Mason Crosby knows if he can get himself to a near great level, he will be in the same foxhole bunker as Trent frickin' BAALKE. This will be the last of the Black Monday reactions that we have. Doug Peterson was out as head coach of Jacksonville, but the Khan family makes a terrible decision, which is not foreign to anyone who is familiar with any of their other business dealings in sports. They keep Trent BAALKE. Why did you keep that man?
I don't know. I've been a Trent BAALKE defender because I do think he gets some
which I still ask why.
Unfair. I mean, because he puts together good rosters. He's put together teams that are a coach away sometimes, but he also has run those teams into the ground after a little while. So it's I don't really have an answer for it. I know that they are not happy in Jacksonville about this situation. The fans, I think, started posting those clown emojis again on all their posts. So he's there for another year, I guess. I don't know.
And not only that, like
what you could say about it,
Dude, hold on. This is the thing for me. From what I've read, it sounds like they're keeping him, but they're not even going to let him make the head coaching decision. It sounds like the Khans themselves are going to make that decision. Like, why are you keeping a guy if you're not going to let him make? Now, granted, hold on. Here's the thing. I'm
what
torn.
Woody Johnson do they think is going to happen in that franchise?
Because here's the thing. On one hand, I understand not wanting Trent BAALKE to make a head coaching decision. I kind of get that. On the other hand, do you remember the last time the Khan family headhunted for a head coach, Justin?
No.
Now, I don't know how much, maybe it was more so the general manager, like this was the top guy, and the Khan family just like went all in on it. But I know, like, they put him on a jet, they welcomed him, they included him in a segment or two by chance on their stupid wrestling show. Urban Meyer. Like, do they learn nothing? What are they doing? Are they going to hire Kurt Ferentz away from Iowa and bring him in? Just add in another problematic college head coach that's going to flame out after a year?
I don't have an answer for
bring in Bobby Petrino. Screw it. Bring in Bobby Petrino. Like, just is Steve Spurrier? Is he willing to take a call? Actually, more so his NFL problems are more so dealing with Dan Snyder. I could kind of forgive the guy for that. But like, come on, man. This is ridiculous.
Rick wants him to bring in Lincoln Riley.
See, I feel like there's a USC joke somewhere somewhere in there for Rick. Like that's why he's saying that. I don't think Rick. We need a power ranking of Rick because of head coaches Rick from college. Rick would actually think would make good NFL head coaches.
Next week, give him a week to prepare.
Yeah, so Rick, we know you're listening to this. We're going to give you homework. Make a list of coaches. I don't care how long the list is. It could be 3, it could be 5 of head coaches from college that could actually become NFL head coaches. Although the Podfather is actually communicating with us at this moment. Lincoln Riley, he's a bum like Kalen DeBoer. So we know Kalen DeBoer is not going to be on that NFL head coaching list to say the least. But that was good. That was good stuff. But yes, Trent Baalke, ladies and gentlemen, if you need to conclude anything from this first segment of the show before we move on, Trent Baalke will survive the zombie apocalypse. I would be willing to go in the bunker with him to survive it, but only to vehemently betray him once we get past to the other side of things, and then we can continue society or rebuild society as is without Trent Baalke at the helm. Because if Trent Baalke was assigned being the leader of like humanity after an apocalypse, just cut it for the human race at that point. We're not making it. Our species is not surviving, or subspecies. I don't know what genus we're technically under in that case. I don't know. I stopped taking science for like 6-7 years now. It's been a while. Give me a break. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on to the next section of the show. But we're not doing it alone. Now, the Podfather is going to be out for a majority of the show, as I said. So, while I can only talk so much, and the people will probably get sick of me after a while, but I know the people love Justin. We need to bring in another man. We need to bring in a new third man to the program to help us with the playoff discussion. This is a man who's been on the show before. I've done many a podcast with this gentleman, and I've called him a don of another sport. But as I've said before, he is the godfather of the gridiron. He is a fantastic football discussion man. I tried to think of a word that was similar to talk that started with F, but I just could not think of it. My brain only works at so many miles an hour in the moment. Let me not waste any more time. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth. Well, he's not a myth because he's real. He's an urban legend. My guy, Bars.
Jared, Iceman. Just not the intros every time. You just know how to make a guy blush. It's been like 100 of these intros, Justin, and every time he just got me cheesing. The fantastic, fanatic football. What was that last one? We struggled a little, but that was all right. We gave it our best.
A fantastic football. I'm gonna say speaker for now, but we're gonna think of a word that is similar to talk that starts with F, and then we'll have a triple entente over there.
Oh, well, thank you for having me again, gentlemen. There's nothing I'd rather do than talk some football on this wild card weekend, especially with just this slate that we've had this entire week with Thursday and Friday, including the college football games. Oh, it's been phenomenal. It's been ridiculous. If every day could be like this, it'd be the greatest.
It really would. It really would, to say the very least. A perfect college football set of games to lead us into the main slate of football in the NFL. But before we get to that main slate, Bars, we need to challenge you a little bit. We gotta get the brain rolling here a little bit before we get to the football conversation. So, you, my friend, for the first time, I don't think this segment existed the last time you were here on the show. But you are going to join with me as we're going to play a round of everyone's favorite game on the show. Name that player.
All right, we got a good one today. So this former Super Bowl champ played 11 seasons in the NFL for 4 different teams, and was drafted in the 3rd round.
11 seasons, 4 teams.
So the way this works, Bars, you and I will each get one guess for 3 rounds. Justin has 3 rounds of hints he's going to give us here.
All right, so this is round 1 of hints. Gotcha.
Yes. So he gives us new information each round. So this is the first set of it. So a Super Bowl champ drafted in the 3rd round, 11 seasons, 4 teams.
Beautiful.
Best recollection I've had of the first round hits he's given us. I normally forget one, but I think I named them all.
All right, Jerk, I'm going to use guest honors here and say you go first so I could use your hint.
Of course.
Or first.
Well, see, here's the thing for me, Bars. It's like and this happens with, I think, Rick too from time to time, is that when we start to go through a Rolodex in our brain and we hit the first name or two, usually can match maybe 1 or 2 of the set hints, but not all 4. Mm-hmm. So I have a name in my head who I know he's a Super Bowl champ. He was drafted in the 3rd round, but he's only played for one team, so I know that won't work. And he has he hit the 11-year mark? No, I don't think he's hit 11 years, but he's getting up there. He's like, I think maybe this was year 8 or 9 for him in the league. So I'm like 2.5 out of 4 there. And what I tend to do sometimes, if I just can't think of a name to get me to hit 4 of 4, I would just give a name to Justin to help get us to the next round. Sometimes I go funny. You know, my go-to for fun is always Visanthe Shenko, but I know he's not going to be the one in this case. Just for fun, shout out to Visanthe Shenko. But in this case, I'm going to go with a somewhat more serious one. But like I said, this guy fits 2 of the 4, excuse me. He's close to one of them, but I know he doesn't fit the team category. But this is just to kind of get us on a roll, because maybe this will start to get us thinking, and depending on the next round of hits, maybe this kind of lets us know which side of the ball is this guy on. So I'm going to go with an offensive player, Super Bowl champion, drafted in the 3rd round, Cooper Kupp. But I know he doesn't fit the other 2. But he fits half of it. So
He does fit part of it, but not the whole thing.
not the whole thing, I know. But I just want to get us to the next round.
Oh, I'm going to say Mario Manningham just because to get us to the next round.
There you go.
Well, we'll go to the next round, but I will let you know this is a Giants 3rd round draft pick.
There we go, baby.
Let's go.
That was the first team they played for. They also won a Super Bowl in their final year of their career. But they were not granted a Super Bowl ring because they missed the entire season on IR. So technically a Super Bowl champion does not have a ring. They were drafted out of Texas A&M. And their Super Bowl season was with the New Orleans Saints.
Ooh. So former Giants 3rd round pick that was on the Saints Super Bowl winning team. Because when you mentioned IR, I was 100% going to make a Kadarius Toney joke, but I know he wasn't a 3rd round pick.
Too soon. Texas A&M. Oh, I should know this. Well, what was the hints again for the 2nd round? Texas A&M. Giants was the last one. Giants was the 3rd round draft.
And he was on the
They
Saints
won a
Super
Super
Bowl
Bowl with
season.
the Saints, but were not granted a Super Bowl ring because they were on IR the entire season, did not play a game.
And that was the last season they played, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or no? Okay. Oh, my God. Iceman, go.
See, the one former Giant I can think of in my head on the Saints team at the moment was Jeremy Shockey, but I know he doesn't fit any of the rest because he did not go to Texas A&M. I know he went to the U.
Yeah.
And I don't. Maybe that was his last career game, but I know he was on the Giants Super Bowl team a few years before. So I don't know if Justin said he was only a one-time Super Bowl champion, but like I don't think it's Shockey, but he's the first former Giant that was on that team that I can think of.
I think it's someone on the defensive side. I just can't think who. I think they're on the line or a safety, or I could be completely wrong.
Rick is guessing Antonio Pierce.
Oh, see, that's what I was thinking, which is linebacker. I was completely wrong.
But not Antonio Pierce.
I was going to say, I don't think it's Pierce because I don't think the Saints were his last team.
Get some sugar. Help think.
Get some sugar, yes.
All right, guys, what you thinking?
Just Brandon Jacobs. I know it's not him.
Not Brandon Jacobs.
Give me... this is definitely nowhere near correct because, good Lord, this man played for so many years after. But just for fun in games to get us to the last round, give me Carl Nix on that Saints offensive line.
No, it is not Carl Nix, but it is someone that played very closely with the offensive line. He spent his entire career as a tight end, mostly used for blocking, before he went on to have a fairly successful coaching career.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Let it up, Jerg. I know you know who it is.
I'm thinking too, Jerg.
Wait a freaking second.
Hang on.
Is it the man, the myth, the legend, MCDC? Is it Dan the Man Campbell?
It is Dan Campbell.
Oh, dang.
I was never getting that. I was never getting Dan. I forgot. I didn't even think of it. He was on the Saints for that last season.
I didn't realize
He was on the Saints
Giants
for 1 year. That was literally the only year he was
him. I knew
technically
we
on the
drafted
Saints.
him. I
Drafted
didn't know
by
he
the
was
Giants in
technically in them
'99. He didn't have a statistically good career. He was mostly a blocking tight end, but did have 934 career yards and 11 touchdowns, and is a very successful head coach of the number 1 seed Detroit Lions. I figured this was a pretty good week as they just came off a major win on Sunday night, and got to give Dan Campbell his flowers there.
Oh, man, I just embarrassed all Giants fans.
Hey, you're good, Bars. We'll bring it back here in the wild card round discussion. But yeah, Dan the man Campbell.
Let me tell you, 11 seasons in the league with not that many catches, mainly a blocking tight end, tells me he was a locker room guy. And him being the head coach, leading them number 1 seed right now proves it.
100%. Also noteworthy achievement from his coaching style. Helped win me my fantasy football championship with how they played Jameer Gibbs. Freaking murdered the corrupt commissioner in the championship game and took him down. And it was a victory for the good guys. It was a victory for the good guys. And I know I'm in this is a room of champions here when it comes to fantasy football, because I know Bars was the defending champion for his league coming into the season.
It was a rough year this year. I don't want to talk about it. It was we were first round knockouts, but I knew it was going to happen. Like I always say, Jerk, you never want to go into the playoffs on a winning streak. If you're on a 5-game bender, you want to lose at least a week or 2 before that, because you're just too hot. It never works out.
You want to be brought back down to earth real quick.
Exactly. Just let them realize, hey, we are beatable, guys. You got to talk to the locker room real quick.
Talk to the locker room and then have it go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, from us talking as champions, talking about a man who maybe he will add a championship to his resume, and Dan Campbell, let's talk playoffs and let's talk wild card round discussions. First off, Justin, thank you for the once again outstanding edition of Name That Player. Fantastic. I gotta start to guess people around currently in the league whenever Justin, because pre-show Justin's like, I could come up with something real quick, and I'm like, oh, okay, that needs to be the tell for someone in the league right now, it seems. So as we get past that, let's talk wild card round, boys. 6 games this weekend, 14 teams in the postseason. 2 of them get to enjoy bye weeks this week, as the Chiefs, the number 1 seed in the AFC, due to their practicing of dark magic throughout the regular season, getting them a near perfect record. Kind of like Bars was saying, you got to lose that 1 game. You don't want to go into the postseason perfect in any way, shape, or form. You got to lose that 1 game to remind yourself what could happen. So that's what the Chiefs did. The Detroit Lions, we talked about this going into Week 18. It was win or go to Arizona in this case, because the game will not be played in LA because of the unfortunate natural disasters happening in Los Angeles at this time. Of course, we hope the best for everyone in and around the area. But the game will be being played in Arizona between the Rams and the Vikings, because that's what was on the line. One of the many things that was on the line in Week 18. But before we get to the NFC side, the way the NFL is scheduled, it's all 3 of the AFC wildcard games are going first in the schedule. With it, we have 2 games on this Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and then we have a Monday Night Football wild card game presented to you by the best network in the world, of course, obviously. No bias there whatsoever. So we have 2 AFC wild card games today. We have Chargers at Texans, and we have Steelers at Ravens. Tomorrow we have the Broncos at the Bills to start things off. Before we get before we switch to the NFC side, this is the way the NFC is working. The NFC's first seed is the team that lost in the NFC Championship game the year before. Note that. The Packers are the 7th seed, facing on the NFC East winning team. That's the 2nd seed. Okay, that kind of sounds familiar. The 2nd seed in the NFC East is taking on the NFC South winning Buccaneers. Wait a minute. And an NFC North team is facing the Los Angeles Rams in the first round. Who copied last year's script? Some originality, people. Come on. But that's the NFC. So before we get to those ripoff artists, let's go to the AFC first, boys. I had to make that joke before we got things rolling here. Let's go AFC. First game in the affair of the AFC with those games. Today, later on, we have 2. Could be good on paper. Could be rough on paper, depending on what happens. Let's start with the Chargers at Texans game. Lads, Bars is the guest of honor. throwing it to you first. Jim Harbaugh has worked his first-year magic yet again. We saw it work in San Francisco. He's pretty good, I think, in his first year in Michigan. And then they eventually won a championship many years later with Connor Stallions being the MVP. Now Jim Harbaugh is back in the NFL. A fantastic first season. From all the rumors and reports of what we thought was going to happen with the Chargers going into this year, well, they very much superseded expectations, making the postseason, double-digit wins. Fantastic year one for Harbaugh and co. And they're now going to be facing a Houston Texans team that, man, oh man, if we did and this could be something, again, we do maybe in a couple weeks' time when we have a little bit more leeway in terms of discussion. But, arguably maybe most disappointing team of this season, just in terms of the expectations after C.J. Stroud and the rookie year for that team. And, of course, DeMeco Ryans' amazing first year as the head coach in Houston. The playoff win that they had a year ago against the Cleveland Browns. And now the relatively close game they had with the Ravens in the divisional round last year. They might not make it to the divisional round this year. It's going to be tough. So, Bars, your analysis on this Chargers-Texans game?
I think it's going to be, if you like a high-scoring game to start a wild card, then I think you need to tune into the afternoon games. This is going to be a real ground and pound defensive game. I think with the way the Texans are coming in, C.J. Stroud hasn't looked good all season. He's had that sophomore slump, mainly due to him not having the weapons that we thought he was going to have. Steph Diggs going down, Nico Collins missing the majority of the season, Tank Dell possibly end of his career. So going in, I'm not feeling too confident about this Texans. They had a little juice, to end the season compared to where they were in the middle of the season. But this Chargers team, I think, is going to be one of the dark horses. LA in total is going to be a dark horse when it comes with the Chargers and Rams, which we'll get to later. But Justin Herbert and Harbaugh are just looking ridiculous. And it's this fact that Justin Herbert wasn't just, when John got there, he didn't just say, go ahead, let loose. It took time to build up to this, essentially. I think there was some trust that had to be built or to learn the offense at least. But Herbert now has full control of this offense. He's perfectly fine keeping it on the ground with Dobbins and the other running backs. Aside from that, though, it's really Labukonki and the other weapons on the passing game are starting to open up. So now we don't really know what we're getting from this offense, but I think this offense in the playoffs is going to be way more high-powered, backed by that defense. The Chargers are 3.5 favorites going in. I laid the house on them. I don't know if I can say this on this podcast because of your job, Jer, but I apologize. But we are full go, Chargers, LA. I don't see a way the Texans could win this unless they stick to Joe Mixon and he has like 150-yard plus day.
Yeah, and maybe who knows? Who knows? Justin, to what Bars is bringing up there, it's kind of like, Harbaugh has really got the defense humming for LA. He's kind of had that since the first week of the season, but it's this offense that was very slow going. Justin Herbert wasn't necessarily putting up the gaudy numbers, but it's been a build, like he said, the last couple of weeks. And Justin, I'll throw this to you because this is a guy that I remember in the draft process, we talked a lot about him on this show, right? Quentin Johnson. Now, in a lot of cases, a guy like Quentin Johnson who struggled so far through a lot of the first 2 years of his career, you have a week like he had in week 18, right? And you think, you kind of almost forget, like, okay, he has a good last week. He'll go in to build it for next season. Oh, wait, he's not done playing football yet. He's on a good team that's about to enter postseason. And the dude put up the best game of his career. And the Chargers put up one of the better, if not maybe best offensive performances in Harbaugh's first season. You can talk, of course, the Chargers, Justin, but let's look at it from the Texans side. This has kind of been a real up and down year. How do you counter this seemingly well-rounded game LA is bringing to you?
By not making mistakes and not getting penalties. And it's something that I think the Texans have struggled with as of late. They're playing a lot of backups, and it's not easy. But this is a team that is going to capitalize on the mistakes you make. And if you have a game like Quentin Johnson, if you're going to have a game where you have Quentin Johnson doing the things he did with Ladd McConkey there and the running backs being healthy, it's going to be a hard team to beat. I don't understand why he's so inconsistent either, because you see him have like some of these great games, and then you see him where he gets hit in the hands like 6 times in a game and has 0 catches. So I don't understand how he is so good and so bad at the same time. But they are going to have their work cut out for him stopping this passing attack, because I got news for you. This is only the start of what this team can be under Harbaugh. This could be a dangerous team. And we'll see, but maybe Justin Herbert finally gets over that hump that it's been on his back for a long time.
Yes, because this is for the Chargers. They have a chance to get, I was reading, their first playoff win since 2018 is what's on the line for this team. Real quick to Quentin Johnson. I do want to give him a little bit of credit for, after what was a really tough rookie year, bounced back way better. 711 yards, 8 touchdowns this season after he only caught 2 in his first year in the league. So if he can, if this Week 18 wasn't a fluke and he can carry that into postseason production, Bars is talking about the Chargers being a dark horse team. This is honestly funny because this is kind of a game of what should have been on paper a dark horse matchup, because the Texans were the dark horse a year ago. Now it looks like the Chargers could take that role from them and they could fill in for that. And this is a Texans team. We're talking about them being the dark horse of the conference coming into this year, to say the very least. So this is a matchup where realistically this team could, and depending on how the other matchups go, the winner of this game likely is facing the Kansas City Chiefs next week. It's not locked in, right? But there's a fair chance the winner of this game is going to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs right now. So yeah, you have a pick up, Chiefs. You have a chance to pick up a lot of momentum here going into the divisional round with a big win here. We'll give our final predictions at the very end of talking all the games, just so the people understand, because I know the people are waiting for our picks, but no, we'll give them all later in the episode, guys. You gotta
I'm picking.
We'll hide the rest of it, to say the least. All right, so that was the first of the AFC matchups. Let's move on to the next of the AFC matchups. And I make the joke with on the NFC side of copying a script. Well, for the third time this season, we're getting Steelers-Ravens. Not the only matchup we might see for a third time in this overall season. And also not the only matchup we're seeing on a repeat in this postseason, because there's also a repeat on the NFC side. Actually, no, there might be 2 repeats on the NFC side. Memory serves. Let's focus on the AFC, though. Steelers at Ravens in Baltimore. The Steelers, it's a very interesting story, eh, boys? This is a team that started the season 4-2. They choose to sit Justin Fields for Russell Wilson. There were a lot of questions with that choice. They go on a run. I don't know if it was 4 in a row or they won 4 or 5. I forget the exact way they did it, but this team just wins with Russell Wilson. They beat the Ravens. This team was number 1 in the AFC North. I don't know if they were number 2 in the conference necessarily, but they were right there with the Chiefs and the Bills record-wise. Like, they were right behind those 2 teams. The Steelers, for all intents and purposes, were looking like they were on pace to be the 3rd best team in the AFC and maybe an upset away from getting a home wild card game in the divisional round. And then the second half happened. Actually, more like the last third of the season happened, and it's been a lot of bad football. Russell Wilson and co have not been able to air it out the same. George Pickens is entering his Antonio Brown / Martavis Bryant arc very early. Is not even waiting to leave the Steelers before he does any of this stuff. Not even waiting for contract negotiations. Come on, George. Follow the script a little bit better, Cheech. But it's just been things going down. And the Steelers defense, for the most part, like, they've still been fine. Like, I think their bad games have just been due to the fact they've been forced to stay out there longer and longer. But the Steelers' defense not necessarily doing all the exact things they did at the start, but still good. And now they're facing a team that ripped the division away from them, right? In the Ravens, 12-5, taking the AFC North from them in the last couple of weeks of the season. Playing some phenomenal football. You have probably the greatest quarterback, running back, rushing duo in maybe league history between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Lamar could be on his way to a 3rd career MVP award for himself. We'll see the results on that at the end of the month. This is a Ravens team that the defense, while at times has struggled this season, looks like they're starting to roundabout and to form a lot better here entering the postseason. It's a good team. There's a lot of talent on this Ravens team, and this game is in Baltimore. And I think I know the Steelers can win in Baltimore. They've very much done that before, but that could end up being the X factor with the AFC North. But as you have said it multiple times this season, Justin, the AFC North, not an easy division to ever predict. And now it's postseason time. So, Justin, what do you make of the Steelers-Ravens matchup here in the wild card round? You're muted. Justin?
You're muted.
I'm muted.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
What worries me about this matchup is Zay Jones being out. He played a pretty big part in that matchup. Zay Flowers. Yeah, Zay Jones is not on that team. Zay Flowers being out.
Zay Jones is, I think, technically out 2 of the playoffs. Just yeah. To be fair to you, you're technically still right.
Yeah, that's true. So they're gonna have to find a way to plug that out, supplement that stat line, those receiving yards, because he was a major part of their game plan last time they played. It's going to come down to what Lamar can do against a tough Steeler defense, because that's not like I believe the Steeler offense is going to light up the Ravens. You're right. It's almost impossible to predict. Could we see the Russell Wilson that put up 4 touchdowns against the Bengals a couple weeks ago? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's impossible to predict what kind of game this is going to be. The only thing that I will say is that historically, every Steelers and Ravens game you watch is usually under on points. That's all I'll say about it. But the Steelers, while being in a close game, I don't think are going to be able to pull this out. But we'll see. I do expect this to be a much better game than people are going to give it credit for.
Yeah, it's projected to be smash mouth football, and you talk about the wide receiver issue with the Ravens because their next leading guy. This is the interesting thing about the Ravens when you look at their receiving stats breakdown. So Zay Flowers is the number 1 receiver this year. Number 2 on the list in terms of receiving yards is Rashad Bateman, right? You have to go 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th is the next wide receiver with receiving yards on that Ravens team because it's Andrews, Likely, and Hill are the next 3 guys after that. That's 6th place guy in terms of receiving yards on the Ravens, by the way. Nelson Aguilar. Look at that. So they'll hope he can catch passes. Bars, throwing it to you. This could be, you were talking about the Texans-Chargers game. This could be a smash-mouth throwback game between these two teams. And it's only right that it would be a Ravens-Steelers game that could see some smash-mouth football in it. Going on both sides, Bars, it feels like between Zay Flowers and his injury, you look at the Steelers wide receiving core, and what version of George Pickens are we going to get? It kind of feels like it's going to be the running attack that's going to make the difference here. And it's all eyes on Derrick Henry and a return to the postseason for him going back to the AFC. What do you make of it? It's going to be Najee Harris and co. Probably more Harris/Warren against Derrick Henry. Whose rushing attack do you have more confidence in, Bars?
I always got to put my money on Derrick Henry, especially when you're combining Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson, like you just said. Iceman, it's possibly the greatest rushing duo of all time in NFL history. The main thing now that I think here is I don't even think it's going to be a rushing game, really. Like, yes, the Steelers are going to need to control the time of possession, and their defense is going to need to step it up. But I think it's really that defense that's going to win because historically, I believe the Steelers won 4 of the last 5 against the Ravens, except that last one, I want to say, where, the Ravens threw 5 touchdowns or whatever. Lamar had 5 total touchdowns. So the way that Steelers won historically every single time is they get Lamar rattled. They apply the pressure. He passes ends up being like 16 of 36 completions. He gives up on the passing game quickly. And then in turn, he runs out of protection. And that's how they get him to just, keep it between the red zone, the middle of the field area, and just live for kicks or whatever. And, with this season, though, I love him. I love the Opera Man himself, the Phantom of the Opera, Justin Tucker. But with the way he's looked this season, do you feel as confident in that leg to take that 50-yard field goal to settle for 3 points? Not really. Not at all, to be honest. I'd rather punt it, see what happens with my defense. So this is going to be a smash mouth game. I feel like it is going to be low scoring. I think the only hope I have here for these offenses to really make something happen is the Ravens put up some points and the Steelers defense hopefully makes up for any points that Russell Wilson is going to not give up, but he's obviously not going to keep up with the Ravens. His goal is to essentially keep the ball out of the Ravens' hands. So I think but at the end of the day, albeit they got that running back committee and the defense, I think just the Ravens in total, thus leading to Derrick Henry in the rushing game being better than the Steelers.
Yeah, and it will be the Steelers defense that you guys are mentioning could make the difference here because in his career, quickly looking it up, 9 interceptions in 6 career starts against the Pittsburgh Steelers is the case for Lamar Jackson. Now, granted, he hasn't thrown a multi-interception game against them since 2020. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on for Lamar and co. of limiting the turnovers because it doesn't necessarily have to be that the Steelers finish too many drives with touchdowns, Well, I mean, obviously they want to, but the less time that the Ravens get to be able to score on this team, if the Steelers can get out to an early lead, they just have to have that, kind of like guillotine hold on this game and just, prevent.
Yep.
It's going to be a very telling sign who will strike blood first in this game, because I think whoever gets that early 9-0, 10-0, 13-3 lead, probably a very good indication of how this game is going to go. Because if we do look at the opposite side, there's a very strong Ravens defense that this team could very much hold off and prevent anything from happening if they get a lead. So it could go either way. Good old AFC North football now in the postseason should be fun, to say the very least. So that is today's games recapped for the beautiful people. And now let's move on to the last of the AFC games, but it doesn't happen.
Real quick, Jared, I'm going to interrupt. I just want to bring up one thing. I want your guys' opinion. Do you think the whole playoff Lamar thing is going to kick in here, or do you think, no, this is where Lamar ends it? Because realistically, we haven't seen playoff Lamar, There's never been an MVP Lamar in the playoffs. So do we think we see it in this game, or do we think that's now that I'm really thinking about it, this is where all our doubt comes from. We haven't seen Lamar do it in the playoffs. This defense, we've seen it done it time and time again. What do you guys think? You think we're going to see Lamar actually shine?
I think, to be fair to him, he was good in the postseason last year. Did he have a 340-yard, 3-touchdown performance? No. If you want to make that argument, then I think we should see that version of him in some way. But I also, again, I still don't understand how you only do 8 design run plays in the AFC Championship game last year if you're John Harbaugh and co. Is it, is your offensive coordinator's first year in the NFL last year, right? Because they hired the guy from college before the 2023 season. I get that, but how do you go away from your bread and butter? And we were screaming about that, the first 3-4 weeks of the season of you have Derrick Henry. Why are you not running Derrick Henry? And then they finally run Derrick Henry and look the success they've had. So I think it's fair to say, I think this is what you could say. It's more than fair to say Lamar Jackson needs to be the definitive reason why they win a football game in this postseason. I think we definitely need to see that happen. Maybe this could be the game. And I think if he does it against a divisional rival who has had his number, as we've mentioned, in his career, that's a big step right there. That's a massive step into clearing stuff. But I wouldn't necessarily say there's other quarterbacks who don't perform in the postseason that are in this playoffs that have had bad losses. So,
but how many are 2-time MVPs, Iceman? That's what it comes down to. Possibly 3-time back-to-back MVP now.
That's more than fair.
All right, sorry to interrupt. Move on.
Well, no, I'll let Justin say his take on it, and then we can move on to the next AFC matchup.
I think it's not. There's been a lot of talk about why everyone thinks Lamar is having such a good season, and I think that for the first time in his career, it doesn't have to be all Lamar. That run game has been all Lamar Jackson for the last 4 or 5 years. They've had not great receiving play for the last 4 or 5 years. And I mean, again, Zay Flowers is out, which is going to hurt them, but having Derrick Henry there has taken so much pressure off Lamar Jackson that he doesn't need to be that guy anymore, which in turn allows him to freely be that guy at any chance he can get. So this is a different Ravens team than we've ever seen in the playoffs. And it's going to be interesting to see what he can do with that. I don't think you see that Lamar in a game against the Steelers. That Lamar doesn't exist because very few people exist in that way against the Steelers team, especially in the playoffs. But if you're going to have the season that he had and lose in the first round, there's going to be a lot of question marks. Yeah. A lot of question marks. I mean, he did have the MVP season, in my opinion. I know Josh Allen and Joe Burrow also had very good seasons, but I mean, he had 100 less pass attempts than everyone around him in those statistical categories, and he still had 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 6th in passing yards, 67% completion percentage. He had an unbelievable year.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to need to step it up, but the most important thing is they win today or tomorrow. Tonight?
Tonight.
And then we could see playoff Lamar next week.
Yeah, because this doesn't necessarily need to be the kind of game where he throws it all across the field. And because even last year, the first game against the Texans, he had less than 200 passing yards, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns along with his passing production. So that could very much be the case where maybe the passing numbers aren't gaudy, but the damage he and Henry do on the ground. So this may not be the game where he does it in terms of the eye-popping stats, but hey, you got 2 more weeks before the Super Bowl to potentially do it. So you got to get past this first one, to say the very least. And speaking of 2 more weeks before the Super Bowl, is this team a couple weeks away from the Super Bowl? They believe it, and they can see it. The Buffalo Bills in Buffalo at home. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of weird, stadium food concoction that is like 1,500 calories when you look at it on paper. Going into this game, it is a Broncos at Buffalo Bills game in Buffalo. The first of the 3 games we are getting tomorrow for the wild card round. The Denver Broncos. Von Miller's former team, so this is either going to be a Bronco revenge game on Von Miller or a Von Miller revenge game to the Denver Broncos. You never know. But in all seriousness, this Denver Bronco team, very upstart. They made the decision early to run with Bo Nix. It took Bo Nix a little bit, right? It was not an easy start to the season. There was a lot of critiques. There was a lot of questions. There was a lot of darts thrown his way. And eventually, Bo Nix threw some of those darts back and more. A fantastic season, late Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign charge against Jaden Daniels by Nix as he falls a little bit shy, 3,775 passing yards, but 29 touchdowns through the air, and he even added 4 on the ground for himself. This is a very intriguing Broncos team that the offensive line has developed into one of the better ones in the league. The defense has been phenomenal. Pat Surtain has been arguably probably played like the best quarterback in the NFL this season. I'm very interested to see if he gets some Defensive Player of the Year consideration. I think he very much deserves plenty of that with how great he was this year. But this is a Broncos team that, Bars, you were talking about some upsets, these last 2 games. This is a Broncos team that has the makings of some potential upsets here. Now, here's the thing. They're going up against a motivated Buffalo Bills team. And I think what we sometimes forget about with sports talk, boys, is motivation by a team. And this Buffalo Bills team, compared to a lot of other ones, is motivated. It's motivated to do a lot of things, to break a lot of perceptions, and do something for this team that hadn't been done in a while, which is get to the Super Bowl and do something that the franchise hasn't done. So, Bars, this last AFC matchup we're going to talk about here in the wild card round, your makings of it, the upset-driven Broncos versus the motivated, this should be our year Bills. What do you think will be the highlights of this matchup?
Game of the day. This is without a doubt the game of the day. I want to say spreads -8.5. I think it's going to be. I don't think the Bills cover that, but I think Bills end up winning. It's just if Josh Allen plays the way Josh Allen plays, there's no way the Broncos could win. The Bills have allowed, I believe, it's the least amount of sacks in the league. I want to say they're 8 fewer than the next team. So we do have the Broncos defense, which everyone knows is one of the best and the most underrated. I can't name you one person aside from Surtain on that defense, but it's one of the best defenses out there in the league. The craziest part, though, is they are clearly their bread and butter is the pass rush. They are one of the best pass rushes in the game, if not the third. They're in the top 3. But when you're going against the best offensive line and your bread and butter is the pass rush, and that's really all you got, I got to give it to the Bills because that means your bread and butter is going to have the best game they could possibly play. I want to say it's more on the defense than it is on Bo Nix. You know how I feel about Bo Nix, Jerk. I think he should have been a Giant. I've been preaching Bo Nix's name since before he went back to Oregon again to play for another year. But besides making this a Giants podcast, Bo Nix, the only way I see the Broncos winning this is the pass rush makes it as difficult as possible for Josh Allen, and Bo Nix just tries to keep up. He needs to play his own kind of Josh Allen type game. He doesn't need to have 3 touchdowns, but he needs to at least produce enough yards and, at least put them in scoring position and not turn over the ball. But this Bills team, like you said, it's motivating. They got Josh Allen, who possibly MVP as well here. I just don't see how they could do it. Maybe next year, though. Like, this team actually is a lot like the Chargers, like Justin said. This team, they're going to get way better. There is no way this is the best version of this team you're seeing. We're going to start having names on that defense. He's going to have another receiver to throw to. It's just this Broncos team, keep an eye for them. I don't think we're having an upset here, but it's going to be a hell of a game.
Yeah, and you talk about the Broncos offense, Cortland Sutton, once again, another quiet 1,000-yard-plus season. Marvin Mims with a late surge this year, absolutely fantastic, is going to be a prime candidate for a real breakout campaign in 2025. Like, this is the makings of a team. And Bo Nix is already going to be in his prime next season, considering his age. But, like, in all seriousness, he's going to be just another year better of throwing against NFL defenses and reading this kind of stuff. It's going to be some fantastic stuff for the Broncos. But, Justin, as we've talked about many years before on the show, and who knows, maybe only a few more weeks of it, the Buffalo Bills have a mission, right? And it is a simple mission. Simple mission, win now. That is the mission. Mission win now, as was once the tagline of Ferrari for a season or two. That's the Bills. That should be the Bills campaign here. Win now, because they want to. And it starts with this going in the AFC. Is this a business as usual weekend for Buffalo? Because there was slight concern last year for the Bills, right? They were facing a defensive heavy based team in the AFC. Last year it was the Steelers. Now this year they're taking on the Broncos. What is with all these script copies? But it's a Bills Broncos game. What do you make of? Are we going to see a nice? I'll give him credit. Vintage Josh Allen performance in the postseason. He's got some good postseason games. I got to give the guy credit there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game where it's going to be all on the quarterbacks. As good as that Denver defense is, we're going to need to see an elite game from Bo Nix for them to have any sort of semblance of a chance here. And if the Bills want to dominate and be who they are, they need Josh Allen to step up and be the Josh Allen that we saw, just dominating teams that he needs to dominate. This is the game where I expect the quarterback play to be top tier. And we'll see. I mean, I can't imagine the Bills losing this game, but I hope it's a good one. If that Broncos team from Week 18 shows up in Buffalo, we're gonna have a good day.
if that Broncos team from Week 18 shows up, it's gonna be a lot of people in Buffalo sweating.
Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up to say the least. And let me tell you something: sweating when it's cold, not a fun experience. So the Bills better hope that team can prevent any upsets from happening here, to say the very least. But no, it's a very good game. I think this is going to be, I know would have been shocked saying this going into the season, but I think this will be the first test of this revamped Bills defense, because again, part of the reason why this show itself can include it, like part of the reason why there was doubts about the Bills going into this year is because you had a lot of subtractions to this team from the offseason. The secondary, all the guys that used to be on that star-studded secondary that we saw in the late 2010s, early part of the 2020s, all gone. Why am I forgetting their linebacker's name? Milano. He got hurt. Was it preseason? I think when he got injured, it was like a forearm thing. Like you have a situation where this team lost so many pieces. It's going to be interesting to see. I think this is going to be the first big test for this Bills defense, which I think is actually good for them, considering the quarterbacks they're going to have to go through. I think an early test is something this team needs here in the postseason, to say the very least. So that wraps up the AFC side of things. Now let's go to the script copying NFC side of things here, with the Detroit Lions, of course, earning the top seed. They get to rest, which is kind of what that team needs, them and the Chiefs, as they see the rest of the NFC play out. Let's go with the first of the NFC games that happen, the 4:30 game tomorrow, the Packers at Eagles. Well, this is an interesting scenario once again. Along with the jokes of me comparing it to last season, in all seriousness, the Green Bay Packers and the Eagles, this is a matchup from the beginning of the season, because in Brazil, these two teams faced off. And we were a Jordan Love injury away and a couple plays away from maybe seeing an upset early in the season. But the Eagles took that matchup. I think the game was in Sao Paulo, if I'm not mistaken. Now you have them facing here in Philadelphia this time for the first game of the NFC wild card round. Justin, I'll throw this one to you first. Packers at Eagles, of course, we know the deal with the Eagles. I mean, if Lamar and Derrick Henry isn't your top rushing duo, probably Jalen Hurts and Saquon is your next one. But Jalen Hurts, he's a little bit banged up going into this matchup. It's going to be on Saquon and this team. They rested Saquon in Week 18 for this particular reason. This team is going to have to step up in a big way. And if you're Green Bay, you have a good formula. Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal this season. And these wide receivers, the big reason why they made that run last year, those wide receivers, they came out to make some plays here and there when it mattered the most. And now they're going to be down Christian Watson, which is just rough to say the very least. But maybe there's still something there. So, Justin, Packers at Eagles, first of the NFC games. What do you got for us?
Jalen Hurts is playing, correct?
I can confirm that in a moment, but everything I've seen says that the plan is for him to play this game.
This is the game that I think that I am the most torn on, because that Packers team has the ability to be a really nasty team. I know they were third in their division. That doesn't mean anything in a division like that. They can go into pretty much any stadium and win confidently, except for some reason, Chicago. I think the Eagles should handle business here, but it's really going to depend on what Jordan Love we get. I mean, it seems pretty consistent that Jacobs is going to be who Jacobs is. We know who Saquon's going to be. We know what to expect out of both defenses. What are we getting out of Jordan Love? And I guess for that matter, Jalen Hurts, who's missed the last 2 games. Do we get, the guy that handles the ball and protects the ball and can have the most mistake-free game, which, I mean, I guess I know it sounds obvious to say it like this, but when you're talking about these 2 specific quarterbacks, limiting the turnovers is such a key thing for them. This game could come down to, like, who has the ball last and which team didn't turn the ball over in the fourth quarter. We'll see. I'm really not sure who to take in this game.
It's a good point. Bars, like, for Justin's point, the reason why the Packers had such a surge last season was because Jordan Love went like a 7-game stretch where he only threw like 1 interception. Like that, like if we're talking about any team here, limiting turnovers for Green Bay is critical for what the mindset for this team is offensively. And you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, it goes the other way because we talk about Jalen Hurts and what that team can do. They need the football to do it because we've seen this season. I think even not necessarily turnovers for the Eagles. I think more so it's just miscues. I think these little miscues, we've seen it in very small instances on this team, but I think the biggest one this season was against the Falcons, right? Leaving too much time on the clock for that team to just come out, and Kirk Cousins, who is no longer employed by the Falcons at this point, if we're being honest, because we know he's not going to be on the team here shortly, like post-release and whatever, like that wasn't great. Now they've very much recovered, 14-3, but like no team is perfect, obviously. There's no such thing as perfect. It's not the perfect team that wins at the end, right? So you look at these are 2 teams where they need to play as little mistake-free football as possible. So it's all about who's going to blink first. Who is going to blink first in this matchup, Bars? Or who's more prone to, I should say.
I mean, I got to agree with Justin. You got to feel like just the position the Packers are in right now after that Week 18 loss, which makes it even so much worse. You were playing to win and you still lost. You lost Christian Watson to a season-ending injury. We don't know how jacked up Jordan Love's elbow is. So I got to say they're more vulnerable to making a mistake here because if that elbow is messed up, you lost the deep game, the deep passing game, which is what realistically the Packers live on, especially with Christian Watson being gone. Now that deep throwing game is completely gone. So you got to hope for Jaden Reed to step up, he's more of a slot man. He can run the deep go routes, but he's more working in the middle of the field. And to be quite honest, he was almost Offensive Player of the Year candidate the beginning half of the year. This second half of the year, he's been almost a complete ghost, it feels like. It's been really Christian Watson and the other wide receivers stepping up. So you feel like Green Bay is more vulnerable here. That doesn't mean that they can't win it. This really is, I feel like, a toss-em. It really could be mainly, I'm a Giants fan. I hate the Eagles, but it also depends what Jalen Hurts are we getting? How healthy is he? So it's really what quarterback is the healthiest. Yes, the Eagles are the overall better team, but if the Packers could find a way to just feed Josh Jacobs the ball, who arguably has been the third best running back behind Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, if they could just find a way to feed him the ball, control time of possession on the clock, and just work that middle of the field, which really goes against their normal offensive play. But with the way Jordan Love elbow might be, you may have to just stick with that. So the Packers are more vulnerable, but it certainly doesn't mean they're out, in my opinion. The spread on this game is still like within a touchdown score. So even Vegas doesn't believe that the Packers are as much of an underdog on paper as it seems.
Yeah, overall, the NFC games, just from like a spread and score wise, are a lot closer compared to the AFC games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting to say the least. And, you mentioned Jacobs there. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, all free agent acquisitions by their current respective teams from this past offseason. Just goes to show running backs are back, baby.
I just want to make a quick statement as well, because, I hear this all the time as a Giants fan. Everyone's saying Shane made the wrong move, which he did. I'm not saying because Saquon's having the year he had. It's more of a locker room thing. I won't get into it. But what the argument I got for that is, let's look where these running backs went to. It's not like if they stood on bad teams, they'd have the seasons they had. Derrick Henry went to one of the best teams in the AFC with an MVP quarterback. Josh Jacobs went to a much better offense with up-and-coming quarterback. And then Saquon Barkley went to arguably one of the best offenses in the NFC. So, yes, running backs are coming back, but at the same time, maybe they were always important. Just the good ones were in the worst situations possible,
If you hate paying running backs, I hate you. That should be the tagline. But no, in all actuality, good choices help guys. To say the very least, good choices help guys. All right, let's move on to the last of the games on Sunday, the second of the NFC games, and the second of the rematches, because all three of these games on the NFC side are rematches from earlier in this regular season. You gotta love it. We have the Washington Commanders at Tampa Bay, which ironically I think was also where the game was in the first week of the season, because that's the last time these two teams faced off. So Jaden Daniels has gone through a full NFL regular season. He's had ups and downs. He's fought for a division. He's thrown a Hail Mary. He's against the Chicago Bears, which I think par for the course for a lot of young quarterbacks in this league. And now he's going to be taking on the first team he faced in his NFL career, against the NFC South winning Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield and co. got Mike Evans 1,000 yards, won another division after starting the year 4-6. The comeback Buccaneers, baby, because this team is putting together some comeback campaigns the last 2 years. Can they make a run of it like last year? Who knows? We'll see. They are once again facing the second team in the NFC East, so there's that. But no, in all seriousness, this is very interesting. This is a Tampa team so well-rounded, a team that Bucky Irving, right, for running backs, as he stepped in big time in his opening rookie campaign as well. Baker Mayfield, not as the numbers maybe not as tantalizing as last year, but still extremely good season for Baker and co. with the injuries this team had to deal with, right, throughout the course of the regular season, to come back and take this division the way they did. And man, this Buccaneers defense. You want to say anything about Todd Bowles? There's a lot to say about Todd Bowles. Dude could coach a defense. And he's going against another guy who's known for his defensive skill as well, because Dan Quinn and this Commanders team, man, this might be the shock team of the year of all of them, because how did this Commanders team go from worst to, in a lot of other years, this probably would be first, but the Eagles were just so good this year. Worst to second place in this division, but 12 wins is absolutely fantastic, with Terry McLaurin having arguably the best season of his career. I think even compared to the other games we've talked, I think for me, this is my personal coin flip game here, boys. This is going to be a tough one to call. So, Bars, I'm going to throw it to you first to give some breakdown on this one, on this tough game. The I don't want to say inexperienced, because there are some veteran guys on the Commanders team, right? Mm-hmm. But this young team spearheaded by this rookie quarterback who's been a sensation this year, against this veteran-laden, still some pieces from the Super Bowl, but team that had a mini playoff run a year ago. What are going to be the X factors in this matchup?
I think this is really the closest game out of the whole weekend. You pick them. This is the coin flip. I'm not really sure who can win here. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think, because you look at that first game of the season, believe it was 30-20 or something like that, the result. So Tampa Bay only won by 2 scores at most, and that was with a first game, brand new to the league, rookie Jaden Daniels, who when he first started this year, he wasn't asked to do much. It was really just hold on to the ball, short throw. If you need a run, run. Now he's really opened up the offense, just like Justin Herbert, and he's tossing the ball deep down the field. So it's going to be close. It's going to be a coin flip, but I got to lean on the Buccaneers just because overall they're the better team. And I can't see such a young team like the Washington Commanders. I'll bet they are a good team being coached by Dan Quinn. I can't see them demanding so much from a rookie quarterback playing his first on-the-road playoff game. I think it's going to be close as possible, but unfortunately, I think it's going to be down to 1 score, possibly Jaden Daniels. It leads to another of those game-winning drives where Marcus Mariota is telling him, get on your feet. But what people forget also is Baker Mayfield played in a conference final game with the Browns, and he had a team that was not even half as talented as this team. The defense, sure, but offensively wasn't even half as talented. So I think that just Bucs offense it's just going to be a shootout. It's going to be 2 caliber offenses, and if Baker could keep the turnovers down, it's crazy. It's a coin flip. It's literally a coin flip. I can't wait to watch this game. I'm with you, Jerry. If there's one game out of the whole weekend I had to pick to sit down and watch, it'd be this one.
And again, this is a rematch. These 2 teams face each other in week 1, just like in the Packers-Eagles game. Like 2 complete evolutions of these team seasons, to say the very least.
How funny is the NFL where on paper you're looking at team names and whatnot? This is not the sexiest game at all. Meanwhile, it's probably going to be one of the most tuned into by football fans, realistically.
Yeah. It's it doesn't have the superstar names, but we might get some performances, to say the very least. We could see a real matchup here between McLaurin and Evans, because Mike Evans, Rick has mentioned in the past, he has games every once in a while that just it remind you how good he is. This could be one of those games. And Terry McLaurin, career high in receiving touchdowns. Now he has an actual quarterback throwing him the football.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to our former compatriots, couch coach and Cruz. I know the 2 of them must be loving Jaden Daniels and the Commanders this season, to say the very least.
Don't forget also Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore again. It's going to be a WWE matchup out there, man. There's just if there's any sex appeal to this game, it's 100% that. Yeah, I know you've seen the memes. I know
we're gonna get a WrestleMania main event in between a football game. Let's go, Justin. Throw this one to you. So very talented players in this game, especially on the offensive end. Mars has kind of mentioned it could be a shootout. Do you see it going that way, or what are the odds that either defense can hunker down and really put the brakes on things for the other side? You are muted, for the record. It's going to take a big stretch before he gets this football take out there.
I realized I was on mute again.
That's what we're here for, buddy. You're good.
No, this is going to be a shootout. This is going to be...
I like that.
Because I'm trying to think, defensively, both teams have pretty decent defensive line, but the secondaries are tough, and partially because of injury. But these guys, this is going to be a shootout. I expect big games from Evans. I expect big games from McLaurin. I expect the run game for each team to keep going. This could be a 35-28 game.
We love that. We love that. This could be a random game for the tight ends. Freaking Zach Ertz has showed up once every 5 games for the Commanders here. And
He's been really clutch for them.
Yeah.
He showed up when they've needed him most.
Yeah, and Kaden had a run midway through the season where he was playing a top 5 tight end in football.
Everyone was hurt. He was the only guy left.
Yeah. I don't know what the total is right now, but just if you're listening, hit the over on this game. I think we all just decided whatever it is.
Basically. Oh man, this should be a good football game, as could this very last game, which is, let's complete the trifecta of previous matchups this season. Vikings and Rams. Gentlemen, F1 fans will get this reference. A short view back to the past, but I'll be actually quicker on this short view than the actual context of it. The Rams started the season 1-4. They beat the Vegas Raiders, which is kind of like a half bye week win. to go to 2-4. After that, the Rams in LA took on the Minnesota Vikings, and they were able to come out, punch the Vikings in the mouth, a Vikings team that had such a good start to that season. At that point, as I look back at the box score of that game going into it, the Vikings only had one loss up to that point. So this team is responsible. This is the only non-Lions loss the Vikings had on their schedule this season. Other losses for the Minnesota Vikings were because of the Detroit Lions. This is the only other team to defeat them in the NFL this season. And they beat them at home. It was a big game. Matthew Stafford threw 4 touchdowns. Puka Nacua had over 100 yards. Kyron Williams nearly had 100 yards on the ground. The defense played a great game, limiting this Minnesota team at the time to only 20 points. Like some phenomenal football by the Rams, right? And this, to me, was the game that kind of kick-started things for them because they get to 3-4 after, and they finish the season after that win 7-3. So you could argue this game more than the Raiders game, because the Raiders game was the first one for them. This was kind of like that turning point in the season matchup for the Los Angeles Rams. And now these two teams will face off. It was supposed to be a home game, but of course we know the natural fires happening in LA. This is now going to be a neutral site game between these two teams. It should be very interesting. This Vikings team, the offensive firepower that we've seen from them this season, at times kind of look a little bit slowed down, more so in terms of maybe someone doesn't have a great game, but there are others to step up. Last game for the Lions, they just kind of kept going for it. It didn't work their way. Now, I understand that you go all the way when it comes to trying to get the top seed, right? So I don't blame the logic, but really kind of what we talked about, at least for us in our chat, like not the usual of what this team does, right? But obviously we believe there's going to be a reset now. It's an emotional disappointment, which I think maybe how much of that could factor into this when you have that emotional letdown of the game when so much was on the line. Now you have to travel away for this. This is a big game for the Vikings because they had this, miracle 14-3 campaign. None of us expected this. Now we there's a lot of teams that they need a playoff win to make this season feel like it was legit. Because 14-3 on paper is great. You got to add a playoff win to it. So Vikings-Rams should be a very interesting matchup. The Rams, of course, the winner of the NFC West. Justin, I'll throw it to you first. This matchup, the Rams did it once this season. They could do it again, or Minnesota could make it go the other way. What do you think is going to be the key determining factor for this rematch again? Third of the 3 NFC rematches in the playoffs in the wildcard round.
Which Sam Darnold shows up. He looked rough in that last game. I don't know what happened. Maybe he had like some jitters or something like that. But I mean, in the first quarter specifically, how many passes did he throw over people's heads in that first quarter alone?
Like 3 or 4 at least.
Yeah, a couple in the end zone. Like, he had a rough day. So look for him to settle down. They need to start hitting, I think, Addison earlier, because in the games where he goes off and he starts fast, they're able to spread the ball around so well. But I mean, this should be all Minnesota, right? Is it just me? I mean, you never really want to count the Rams out. They're well coached. They have a good core of veteran players, and they're a good young team. They're a few pieces away from consistently being good. This should be all Minnesota. That defense, Brian Flores, has been excellent for them. I don't know. I can't imagine it being anything other than Minnesota.
It's very interesting. I know I see Bars shaking his head a little bit. Well, Bars, we talk about it. This is something for me that I think could be the key here. And maybe this was part of the reason why it happened in Week 18, but especially for this. Do we have questions about Aaron Jones and the Vikings rushing attack in this one? Because maybe if you are forcing Sam Darnold to have to be the guy in this case, that could lead to a little bit of weakness here. And Aaron Jones has kind of been, he's been up and down. It's been, let's be real, it's been a solid year for Aaron Jones, all things considered. Being last second cut in the offseason for himself by the Packers, finding a home in Minnesota. He's had a good season. He's had a very respectable year for himself, right? But if he is, again, another guy who, like, week by week, the last few weeks has been questionable. If Aaron Jones isn't necessarily 100%, this guy is a playoff performer, by the way. He's performed in the postseason before, especially last year. Massive reason why the Packers got that upset win against the Cowboys was Aaron Jones. if Aaron Jones isn't performing the way we've seen him perform in playoffs past, and you force it on Sam Darnold, I see why Bars is shaking his head. So Bars, give us that analysis of yours. What are we cooking up here?
So I got to be honest. Before the fires were even a thing, I was all Rams, no question. I was as confident in the Rams as Justin is in the Vikings. I thought the Rams are going to run away with it just because this is the sleeper team of the NFC right here. The Rams. Keep your eye on them. Yes, their offense has been on the fritz the last couple of weeks, but it's Sean McVay. I'm sure he's going to, raggle everyone and get that streamlined. Really, why I think it may be the Rams is that defense. They're figuring it out at the end of the season, which the only reason why you really can't tell is because, well, the offense has been struggling. But the last 3 weeks, the Rams defense allowed 6, 9, and 9. That is playoff caliber championship winning defense. So if we could have former Super Bowl champion Matt Stafford just play the way he is with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, this is a former Super Bowl winning team. So if that offense can play, I'm feeling confident. Now, you throw in the wild card of we're in Arizona. I'm not worried about home field advantage, really, because let's be honest, if you watch the games, whether you're the Chargers or the Rams, you never have home field advantage in your own stadium. It's more of how does this affect their week? You got to fly in on Monday. I believe they already flew in Monday, Tuesday, whatever it was. That's a day of travel right there. You got to get used to a facility that isn't your facility. Grass may be different, as corny as that sounds. It's something in the NFL that matters. Turf, natural grass, all of that. So it's really, how is this going to affect their prep going into the week? Something about this Rams team. I'm feeling good about Sean McVay. He's nitty gritty. He'll figure it out for them. So as you were saying, Jurg, and as Justin was saying, for me, for the Vikings to win, it really does all end up on Sam Darnold's hands, which makes you think maybe week 18 was a fluke, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe Dan Campbell saw something in the tape. It's not the first time they played them. Now you got all season of Sam Darnold tape to really figure out how to neutralize the Vikings. Aaron Jones has had a good season. Funny enough, I was looking at his stats, what is it? 1,138 yards on 255 attempts. That's not bad at all. 5 touchdowns, a little questionable now. That's where my eyebrows raise up. But something about that 1,100-yard season doesn't feel like he had that 1,100-yard season. I guess it may be because towards the end of the season, he hasn't really cracked 100 yards since November. But it's just, I feel like you're going to be asking way too much of Sam Darnold, and Sean McVay is way too good a coach. But KOC is a great coach as well. But it's going to be a good one, man. But I got the Rams in this.
And KOC, I believe, is from the McVay coaching tree. So this is the student taking on the master in this case, to say the very least. And it's something that should be very intriguing. And you kind of mentioned things like getting tape. This is a Rams team. It sacked Sam Darnold 3 times in their last matchup, and a good amount of QB pressures. This is a team like that. Again, they've beaten them once, and Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn. You got to give them credit where credit is due for the last matchup between these teams. So very interesting. Before we move on to we're going to give our full predictions for each game here in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to list it. I'm not asking you to necessarily go against your predictions here, boys. I just want to make this point about this set of wildcard games. We got 6 wildcard games here. A lot of close lines here. A lot of potential for upsets. If I set a line at 2.5 upsets per the spreads right now, 2.5 upsets, would you go over or under that amount?
I'm going to go under. I think the half takes it.
I'm going to go under, yeah. 2.5 high.
If you said it at 1.5, I'm going over.
Okay, that's fair. I was just curious because we could see some upsets this weekend. We could see a good amount of upsets this year, so it should be fun. And honestly, that would make the wild card round heavily interesting, to say the very least. So should be good. All right, it's time for our full predictions. We will predict each wild card, and you people have heard the full analysis of everything, and now you are going to get our predictions game by game. But before we get to that, you are going to hear predictions from a man who didn't really give that much analysis in this one. Now, that's not me because I technically gave a bullet point here and there for each game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on to the show. Everyone's maybe arguably the fan favorite of this podcast, Sienna. He's going to join us and give predictions in place of the Podfather. because he couldn't be bothered to show up to work today. Oh no, he's here! He's here! He's here! By God, he's here! How are we doing, Podfather?
Bars, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. A little intimidating, you know. You got the dog first. Is that the muscle?
No, that's the annoyed, tired big sister, the one who's currently banging the cabinet door against the oven right now. Yeah, but no, she muscle. Like she's intimidating in name only. Like she'll bark at everything, and then she's a big wuss. So I think she actually jumped up like a cat at one point when something happened like in the house a couple days ago. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I apologize for not being on the show. Like I said, I took some little duty this week.
Oh,
yeah, no, don't touch the camera.
She's moving.
She's moving, man. She is moving, grooving, and God help me, the minute that I take that key off the stairs, she's gonna go flying up the stairs.
Yeah. So don't worry, Rick. We'll be very quick here. We're gonna go around the table for each game here. First off, I love the 4-box we got here. It's just fantastic visual here for the people. I think first 4-box in proper 4-box in pod history. So there we go.
I only wish that it wasn't on a cell phone because my widescreen is paling in comparison to your full screen. So
don't worry about it. Don't worry. All right. We'll run through this. I will start with the Chargers-Texans game. Podfather, you're joining us. Let's run through it. You start your Chargers-Texans prediction. Then we
May I also just say before we go, because I know that this wasn't mentioned at the beginning, congratulations, Jurg, on winning your second SAOC Pick Challenge title this season, beating the bridesmaid Justin by 1 point this year, and our closest challenge ever. And the ironic part about it was that it was the Jets that carried Jurg to victory this year. Justin's beloved Jets carried Jurg to victory. And also,
they called me a madman for that pick with the 1-pointer bars.
And the Lions got me my 1 point third place victory over our mascot, which means that I get to stay clean for the whole year. So yay! No swearing from the guy who hasn't swore in about 140 episodes.
You also probably would have gone on like a half-week drink binge if you had lost to a puppet.
Let me tell you something. I would have bought out stock in Mike's Hard Cranberry Lemonade and just gone to town on it because that would have been phenomenal. So here's my thing. I did hear you guys' analysis about the Chargers-Texans game, and I do agree with you on a lot of points. However, the Chargers remind me of one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, Steve Borden, a.k.a. Sting. Whereas the only thing that's for sure about Sting is that nothing's for sure. Same thing with the Chargers. We've been mocking the Chargers to be really good or really bad, and every year they're the opposite of what we expect them to be. So in this game, just because it's the opposite of what I think is going to happen, give me the Texans. Give me the Texans to actually knock off the Chargers. Justin Herbert still is winless in playoff games because it's hilarious, and nothing would make me happier than watching Jim Harbaugh lose another game. So I'll take the Texans. I think, Bars, to your point, I think Mixon does go for 160 in this game. But I think what's going to happen, just to get a little game analysis, which I'd like to do, and you guys don't have to, Joey Bosa gets called for a phantom roughing the passer at the very end of the game, and Kaimi Fairbairn hits a 60-yarder for Houston to win by 1 point in this one.
I could see that happening.
Yeah,
it's a very Charger way to lose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As you hear, I don't even know what song that even is, but she hit the cube, so there's music attached here too. Hope this isn't copyrighted. I don't know what song it is.
Bars, your turn. Your prediction.
I gotta go against the Podfather. I'm gonna go Chargers. If I had to go between the two quarterbacks, I'm gonna go with the one who ended the season the best. I've been a big Justin Herbert fan. Something about these Oregon quarterbacks that should have been Giants quarterbacks. They're close and near and dear to my heart. So give me Justin Herbert to win it.
Don't worry, Dylan Gabriel.
I was gonna say, Bars, Dylan Gabriel, third round pick.
Justin, your Chargers Texans prediction.
I'm gonna have to go with the Chargers too. I think that team is too well balanced, and I just don't see them losing to this team.
It'll be close. It will be close, though.
Rick is going to laugh at us next week because I'm also going with the Chargers. So if the Texans win this game, he will get bragging rights forevermore. So there's that. All right, Rick, I think this is perfect. We're just going to keep going in this same order. So, Rick, you'll be first here. Steelers, Ravens.
The Zay Flowers injury really throws me for a loop with Baltimore because I think they're going to use Isaiah Likely a lot, and I think that's going to be good because I don't know how the Steelers are when it comes to handling tight end receptions. They're going to be good secondary ones with the wide receivers, but Likely might have a huge game. However, I think if that means that the Ravens rely too heavily on Derrick Henry, watch the Steelers defense come to play. And I think this game is close. And I'm going to go with the shock here. Give me, as Jurg and Justin know, give me friend of the show, Mike Tomlin, my personal friend, Mike Tomlin. And I'll take the Steelers. Or maybe he's going to be the coach of the Bears next year. Whoever wants to trade for him. Who the heck knows anymore? Give me the Steelers to knock off the Ravens, because it's very hard to beat a team in this division once, twice, or 3 times a lady. Whatever happens. So
That's
give me
true.
Pittsburgh.
That's true. Bars?
Papa is going to make me feel like a real fool, but give me the Ravens. I think it's going to be another close game. I do think it's going to be a close game, but as I always say, when it comes to the playoffs with these close games, I look at the quarterback and, give me the 3-time MVP, future 3-time Lamar Jackson. Give me the Ravens.
Yeah, except Bars, to your point, the Steelers have a Super Bowl winning quarterback on their roster.
Ooh, not wrong. Not wrong.
Limited.
Fraud. Anyways, Justin, you go.
Give me the Ravens. I don't want to bet against Lamar.
Yeah, no, I'm in a similar boat here. Ravens, I think it could be a relatively close game, but I could see the Ravens getting a dagger touchdown with a couple minutes left to seal it. So there's that. Broncos at Bills. Podfather, you've gone with 2 upsets so far. Are we going to go 3 for 3 in the AFC?
No, but I will say this game is going to be a lot closer than you anticipate. However, I do think the Bills will cover on a late touchdown. I think the Broncos defense will hold out for 3 quarters because they are a lot better than everyone expects. Surtain is great in the secondary. Nick Bonito has had a phenomenal year in the linebacking core. And even their front 7, which includes Jets alum John Franklin Myers, because nothing makes us happier than seeing a Jets guy do well somewhere else. They're a very good team. But I think Bo Nix's experience or lack thereof in these types of situations is going to catch up with him at the very end of the game. Denver will keep it close, and I think at one point they'll even lead in the third quarter. But Buffalo will supplant and cement, and they will win comfortably, I say by 10 or 11. But it's going to be a very close game for the first 2.5, maybe 3 quarters.
Okay. Bars?
It's not something you want to hear when you created a parlay that had the Broncos covering. It's a pop outer coming on saying that the Bills cover last second. But give me the Bills. I do agree. The inexperience is going to catch up. I agree with the prediction. I think Broncos are going to lead in the first half, and then, good locker room talk makes the switch up.
The pod daughter is clearly not a fan of your parlay either.
He likes your dog instead, so you know.
So we got 2 Bills so far. Justin?
Bills.
Simple as that. Well, I agree with Rick. I think there will be a touchdown here at the end to ultimately decide the game, and I think clearly it's going to be an easy walk-off. But they'll call me a madman because I'm going to pick a Denver Broncos upset victory here for the postseason. I don't have actually any justification for it. I'm going to predict a Pat Surtain walk-off pick 6.
Didn't Cortland guide you to a fantasy championship as well?
Hey, Cortland Sutton, he's one of my guys. Cortland Sutton and Pat Surtain are going to lead us to the promised land. The Bills will win by 5 touchdowns now. So let's move on to the NFC side of things here. Packers, Eagles, Podfather. As I noted, Rick, all 3 NFC matchups are rematches from earlier this season. 2 of them from the first week, mind you. So,
and isn't it ironic that Jordan Love's status is questionable for this game after he got hurt at the end of the first week? Sao Paulo and Philadelphia might have the same turf. You never know. I'm so tempted to pick the Packers again because of what happened last year with this game against the Cowboys. But do we know for sure if Jalen Hurts is out of concussion?
He is. Yes.
Then it's got to be the Eagles because when Jalen Hurts is running that offense, they're unstoppable. Barkley's going to have a slower game. I think he's going to have a weaker game this time around, but it's not going to matter because if Jordan Love's up in the air, you don't have Watson for team play than the Cowboys were, the fraud boys I call them. Give me the Packers.
His phone giving him a thumbs up right there.
Yeah, his phone appreciated it.
Good stuff. Bars, what are we thinking for this one? Full prediction.
It pains me to say it. Give me the Eagles. Jordan Love isn't healthy. They lost Christian Watson. If you want to hear the analysis, rewind. Give me the Eagles.
Rewind, ladies and gentlemen. Justin.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. I want to pick the Packers real bad.
I want
to. I just don't believe in that offense the same way I believe in the Eagles as a team.
Yeah, it's a combination of Love's injury and also It's been so inconsistent this year. We talked about the weapons this Green Bay team has, but it's like they take turns.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't even take turns consistently enough. I don't think a single Packers receiver has more than 800 yards this season. Like there's no go-to guy. And I'm not even saying you need a definitive number one, but like having a go-to guy would be really nice in a game like this. So that's part of the reason why I'm sticking with the Eagles, just like you guys. And I watched the Packers just get their revenge on us, just like they did last year when we went. Actually, did we go? All three of us go Cowboys, or did
I wanted to pick the Packers, but we all went Cowboys. So.
Yeah,
I think we did. Yeah.
All right, Podfather. We talked about this. This could be the shootout of this weekend. Commanders, Buccaneers. What are we thinking?
I think 35-28 is downplaying it. I go 45-41. I go really big shootout here.
That sounds like the best football game we've seen in a while in the postseason. I love that.
I think much like the Bo Nix game, I think the Jaden Daniels inexperience will catch up to him at points, but there's something about this Commanders team that just screams destiny right now. How many games they've won in the last few seconds that have been crazy. I think you're going to see a career game from Mike Evans. I think he's going to get over 200 receiving yards in this game. Terry McLaurin, the same thing, but I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels who's walking off the winner here. Give me the Commanders over the Bucs, 45-41 in this one.
Ooh. Bars, what are we thinking?
Give me the Bucs. Give me the Bucs. You know, I think it's going to be a shootout. Take the over. Don't think twice about the over, but I just think that inexperience is going to catch up. I feel the magical run the Podfather is talking about, but that magic's got to end at some point. I think this is where it comes.
Worth noting real quick, this is the highest total from the projected lines from our friends at
ESPN Bet.
This is the only game where the total is above 50. It's 50.5 is the projected total. Everything else is a little bit below that. So worth noting. Justin, Bucs Commanders.
I just think there's too many weapons for the Bucs. Baker's got to protect the ball. He tends to have these shootout games, and he lights it up and he slings it, but then he also throws a couple picks that keep these teams in games. I think it'll be close, but I think the Bucs pull away in the fourth.
Okay. We're having a lot of 3-1s, eh? Give me the Buccaneers over the Commanders here, just barely. I'm with Rick in terms of I think we'll see a double dose. I think Mike Evans and Cade Otton could have massive games here, to say the very least, for Tampa. But again, I'm not going to discount what Irving has done in Tampa this season. He's the best running back drafted from this draft class by far. And it will not surprise me if he just continues to keep on doing his thing. This Tampa team is going to keep on churning. It's going to be very interesting to see because them as the fourth seed, they would be the lowest seed as of now advancing, and that would be a rematch with the Lions. So there's something to watch out for. All right, last matchup of this wild card weekend for us to predict: Vikings at Rams. Podfather.
Remember what we talked about last week, guys, with the Vikings or the Lions, whichever team lost this game? How do you justify a 2-game losing streak when your second game of that losing streak is being knocked out of the playoffs? This is the worst matchup for the Vikings, I think. The Rams being this team, it's the worst matchup for them because I think the Demons are going to come back and that the Vikings defense is going to let them down. I don't think it's going to be Darnold. I think the defense is going to let them down this time around. So I'm with Bars here. The Rams are a sleeper. I understand this game is in Arizona, and don't worry, I'll get to that in a little bit. But, yeah, I think the Rams win this one. I think the Vikings, that 2-game losing streak, knocks them out of the playoffs, and then the questions are going to come about Kevin O'Connell's playoff pedigree because it's not going to be there at all.
The Rams literally sat everybody in for Week 18 for their situation. So this is what they've been rested up for. Bars, what are we thinking?
Like the Podfather said, give me the Rams. That defense, I already told you they kept that's less than 30 points in the last 3 weeks they had total. That's exactly what you want going into the playoffs. That offense just needs to click. And you know what? I didn't even think about KOC and his playoff pedigree, something about it. I feel like the 2-game losing streak, you're right. This is a big game for Sam Darnold, and last week was the biggest game of the season for him. So big game. He's not stepping up so far. Give me the Rams.
He is, I believe, 0-1 in his playoff career because that one was the infamous check down to TJ Hawkinson on 4th and 8 situation that happened. And everyone here knows my critique of that offense and Kirk Cousins after that play happened, to say the very least. So there's that. Justin, your Vikings-Rams prediction?
It's got to be the Vikings. They need to win this game.
They do indeed need to win this game. That's why I'm picking the Rams.
Obviously, you need to win a playoff game, but like they need.
No, I
If
know
you
what
want to keep things the way they are, and you want positivity in Minnesota, this is a game you need to win.
Yeah. So Justin will be now. I think 3 of the 4 of us will have a 3-1 against this because I will pick the Rams here for an upset. I just think there's something with that team, man. That defense, for missing Aaron Donald, I think it's very underrated what that group defense has done together, and like that young defensive pass rush, so good. For the last 2 years, I don't think anyone has drafted better defensive linemen than the Rams.
With no picks either. They traded all their picks and they still drafting, you know?
It's insane.
One thing I do want to bring up is if the Vikings do lose this game, the questions already start right now. Do we keep Sam or do we just go full into the J.J. McCarthy thing, you know? So
Bars, they have Daniel Jones. They don't need to keep Sam. Come on.
There it is. That's the next rehab project for KOC and crew.
I'm about to go to rehab if I hear that name again.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's set of wild card predictions from us. Don't worry, this is not going to be a one-off appearance. We do plan to have Bars back on the show a couple times. I mean, for me, preferably it'd be every single time we record for the postseason here. But of course, obviously, it's all about schedules and what things will work. But Bars, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, brother. It was good to have you back on to talk full football.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure. You know, love talking sports and love talking to one of the best podcasts out there, you know?
Yes. But before you go, you know, you experienced your first rendition of Name That Player. You need a front row seat now to what has been the longest standing tradition in #SAOC history. And I don't mean Justin losing the pick challenge in the last week of the season. What I mean is, in truth be told, the greatest segment, some would say, in podcast history, which is a good old roast or podium. Podfather, take us off.
Remember what I told you in the chat, boys. This is going to be the spiciest and maybe the most controversial rant podium of all time. So, Bars, I hope you've got some popcorn because next week you might be joining me full time because I might be, fired and shipped off to Siberia after this one. There you go.
Got my gummy worms. We're
good.
Good.
Man. Good man. All right. So let me give an honorable mention here because I haven't done that a lot. But an honorable mention for me is something that has really irked me when I'm listening to the sports talk radio in our area. You ever hear those commercials about, betting lines and everything where they can't exactly tell you the team name of who's there or what the players are? Why even have the commercials then if you're going to say the Cleveland quarterback is going to do this, or I like Los Angeles and say like okay, what LA team? I like LA, comma parentheses A. Like why? If you're not going to be able to say the name of the team that you're rooting for or that you have the betting lines on, don't run the commercials. It's that plain and simple because it wastes all of our time. It's a 30-second spot that goes nowhere. And I'm supposed to think as a sports fan, like, why can't you just say the Browns or the Chargers or the Bulls? Like, why do we have to hide behind this mask of, oh, we're not telling you what the actual names are? Like, is there a copyright about the name Bulls? Come on now, stupid. Thank you. Number 3 on my rant podium for this week here. I'm going to call him out. And this is where it's going to get spicy because he deserves to be called out right now. And this also goes out to all the sports media in general. Like, enough. Dan Orlovsky this week said that the Kansas City Chiefs are the most disrespected dynasty of his lifetime. Let me ask you a question, Dan Orlovsky. What dynasty have you ever been a part of? The quarterbacks running out of the end zone dynasty? Like what are you doing? You're calling that disrespectful. Have you not seen the fact that the Chiefs get wins every single week by dark magic or by playing the right cards or by tipping the ref $2.50 off a DoorDash order every single week or Uber Eats, whatever McConaughey commercial right now? Like, disrespected, there's a reason for it. It's because the Chiefs dynasty is built on a house of lies. They sit on a throne of lies. It's that simple. So disrespected, yeah. But you, as a media personality, don't get to say that. What was your career highlight? Going to, the Frisco Bowl with UConn at some point? Like, come on now, man. This is ridiculous here. That's spicy. But now let's get controversial. Number 2. I don't mean this in a bad way. I really don't mean this in a bad way. But National Days of Mourning. They're a thing, and I understand that, we have people who are passing away, and it's very sad. One, yeah, she's fine for right now. Yeah, she'll be okay. I'm almost done anyways. So with National Days of Mourning, they're very sad. You know, we honor the person who passed away. Why does the post office need to close on a National Day of Mourning? Like, I get it. Federal agencies and all that sort of thing. Like, I get it, but I still want my mail. I want my Valpak coupons the day that they're promised to be given to me. You know, if you're going to close the post office and close the government, then close everything else. Why is CVS still open on this National Day of Mourning? And also, by the way, why do we give these out, you know, not more often? You have a National Day of Mourning for Jimmy Carter, who was 100 years old. I'm sorry, that's not mourning. That's celebrating the fact that he lived to 100 years old. Meanwhile, DMX gets nothing. We need a National Day of Mourning for DMX. I'm sorry. Like, that, ridiculous. And offshoot of that, the TikTok trend that I'm seeing the young kids do now, where it's DMX says stop, DMX says stop. What does he say next? And they don't know. It hurts me. The answer, by the way, is shut him down, open up shop. Yeah, I got my card right here. Thank you very much. I know. I'm going to turn this on for you in 1 second while I destroy my entire radio career right now for you. There you go. Yeah, have fun. Have fun on the piano there. And now, number one for me. This is where we're going to get really controversial, and I feel horrible for everyone in California. The situation right now with the wildfires is untenable. I wish that on nobody. If you're a normal person, a regular U.S. citizen, average Joe, blue-collar worker who has lost your home in the fire or lost your livelihood in the fire, my sympathies, my empathies, my prayers to you. But if you're a celebrity that has lost your home in this fire, my empathy for you only goes so far. Like, yes, you lost your home. Oh, boo-hoo, but it's $6 million your home was. You can get that back. Or you know what you should do? How about you rebuild the rest of the community who lost their home instead of building your 9-story palatial estates that just have nothing to do with anything. You barely live there because you're on tour all the time. So they just sit there as vacant properties. And the fact of the matter is that John Legend and Chrissy Teigen are in a hotel now with their kids, their dogs, and, quote, their bearded dragon. John Legend has a goddamn bearded dragon. We don't talk about this enough, okay? The exotic lifestyle of these celebrities needs to be examined and scrutinized. I'm sorry. I feel very sympathetic for everybody else who's a normal person. I have cousins that are out in California who are, you know, thankfully okay, but they're, you know, their homes being affected by this. I get that. But you're telling me that I need to feel bad for Harrison Ford, who drives up to talk to the firefighters in a Tesla about his house? No, I don't feel bad for you. My pity and empathy goes to a certain point. And then it's like, how much was that house? $5 million? One of the houses that was destroyed was the guy who won the $2 billion Powerball lottery back in November of 22. And one of those homes was destroyed. Okay, you won a $2 billion lottery. You knew what you signed up for. I'm sorry to tell you. So, like I said, prayers up to everyone in California who's going through it, the normal people, everybody else, all the celebrities. How about you put your money back into the community to make it better and make it more fire resistant instead of building your 3-pool, 7-pool room, 95 bathroom estates that you never use? Like, I hate unused rooms, and I hate unused houses, and I hate celebrities, because what are we going to get now? Gal Gadot singing Imagine one more time for the California wildfires? Try and raise awareness and all that? Give me a damn break. And that, my friends, is your controversial rain podium. Bars, you can have this spot because I'm getting shipped off to Tanzania.
You might be sent off to Belgium to forcibly have some Belgian chocolate. And at this point, Rick,
We send me the whales, man.
Oh, yes. Yes. So next week might just be me and Bars recording, depending on what punishment the Podfather gets from the powers that be. Truthfully be told, we have no ideas. There is a higher power on the show. We just don't know what it is at this point, ladies and gentlemen. But what we do know is that concludes this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. We've talked about the key factors here. Trent Baalke will be able to survive any kind of apocalypse, and we'll just stick it out with him until we eventually betray him when we're on the other side. Potential upset weekend here in the wild card round. Shootouts. Close defensive matchups, upsets, outstanding performances galore for this weekend. And of course, more importantly, The Podfather hates unused rooms in any household. That's the biggest takeaway to take from this.
Open concepts are beautiful things, man.
So we'll be back here next week to recap the wild card round and what our thoughts will be on this slate of games that's going to be starting here in just a couple hours' times for this glorious 2.5 day stretch of, let's say 3 day stretch of football of professional ranks after we had an amazing college football set of games as well. So thank you so much for all of you joining us on this week's edition. We'll be back next week for more playoff conversation, and we'll be able to sprinkle in other topics here and there. Don't you worry, guys. We talked about some stuff at the start here. We're probably going to continue to do that. Various news items and an itinerary in the future. But for now, to all of you that enjoy fun football and chaos, just like the rest of us, thank you. Have a good one. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
She stole my...